All right, now we're live. It's just Zach and I in here currently, and we're going to crash through setting up ZF2 with Doctrine. Zach, are you here?
I am. Yes, sir.
Oh, fantastic. All right, so let's get through this. Although we've been chatting about this for a while now, a couple hours actually today, so hopefully this won't be too painful. But we started out noticing that if you go to puppet.com right now today and try and create a system with Nginx as the web server, it just won't spin up, or at least it won't spin up for us. So we had to apply a few changes in the Puppet scripts and now have a repo up with the actual Vagrant box rather than starting at Puppet. So we'll go ahead and I got to share that somehow. Did I already share that on the event page? Do you know, Zach?
I'm looking. For some reason on the events page, we have it showing my portfolio, not your desktop. That's not what we want.
Now let me double check real quick. No.
And I do not see in the details of the event. Oh, yep, you did. You shared Doctrine ORM Module and the user guide for the Zend Skeleton.
Fantastic. All right, so on the event page here, because I am a noob at these Hangouts apparently, or at least Hangouts on air. What is Showcase? Oh, well. Anyway, we'll have to just go to the event page. And then find the link to the repo, which is under github.com/codejetnet. Yeah. And it's called the ZF2 Doctrine presentation that I've got on my screen now. Fantastic. So we'll start by cloning that down.
I'll go ahead and paste this to the event page as well, this ZF2 Doctrine GitHub.
Fantastic. And then once we clone that down, I'm just going to remove the one I just created because I've cloned this down and spun it up already. I'll just Vagrant up because it takes about 15 minutes to Vagrant up this. So if you're just following along, you'll want to go ahead and pause when I start moving on from this until your Vagrant box is up. Now, after the Vagrant box spins up, we will go ahead and pull in our requirements. We're going to start with a Zend Framework Skeleton Application. Oh, I should mention, it just asked me for my password. Two very useful plugins are the Vagrant Hosts plugin, or the Vagrant Host Manager, which can be installed with the command line with Vagrant plugin install Vagrant-host manager, and Vagrant bindfs, so that you can use the NFS file system to connect your shared folder. And that's installed just as simply with Vagrant plugin install Vagrant-bindfs. And with those two plugins installed, it always asks me for some credentials when spinning up the VM. The focus today is to set up a base application in Zend Framework 2 using Doctrine as our ORM and set up an entity that we can use actively in our controllers with an abstract RESTful or with a RESTful controller. All right, so now I've got this spin up.
And for those following along, on the event page, you can get to the bindfs and host plugin for Vagrant from the comments. I've linked both.
Fantastic. There has to be some chat here. I can't believe there's no chat, or I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, I was digging around myself, so it's not just you.
All right. Now, From the root of the project, I'm just going to composer require, or wait, no, I'm going to create the project first. So create project, stability of dev, a Zend Framework, skeleton application. And we're just going to dump that into a ZF2 folder right now because it requires that you dump it into an empty folder. There will only be a couple more composer requirements after this, and we'll go ahead and run them on the command line just to waste everybody's life and time. But you can do this quicker if you know the versions that you're shooting for by just putting it in your composer.json file. While this is happening, I might as well go ahead and create a Zend or a PHP Storm project from this directory here. There we go. Fantastic. Now, I'm not sure I have the patience for this, Zach. Yeah, usually I could just run off and start doing something else, but I'm not sure the audience is interested in my thought process while I wait for Composer or anything else.
You know, to be honest, though, digging in the brain of somebody who is fluent with this stuff is probably a great thing to, you know, to subscribe to. So,
Eureka! Oh, there it is, right? All right, we're going to remove the existing version system files. And now we have in a folder here, we have Zend Framework 2. Now, I'm going to jump in here, and in my ZF2 folder, I'm going to get rid of the Vagrant file. Okay. And move all of this stuff up one directory. And I'm going to replace the public directory because I don't need that. Now, you got to remove the Vagrant file, though, because it's a very bare Vagrant file that comes with the Zend Framework 2 skeleton application. Now that we've got Zend Framework skeleton application installed, we should be able to visit local.recipes. Oh, it says 502 bad gateway. So the reason that this is occurring is because PHP 7 FPM, which is what we started out with, Vagrant.
it is not launched and it's still in development.
Yeah, it's not it's not launched because it doesn't have a service launcher on boot, so it doesn't know when to start. So sudo service PHP 7 FPM start will solve that problem. In the next branch that we proceed into, I have that fixed. So there is a, well, not fixed, but I have a workaround for that in the startup always folder of Puppet, so that it just simply runs that. Anyway, now that it's running, we'll have our Zend Framework 2 application. Fantastic. I'm going to jump back out of here and go to, out of the VM and go to my console here and do composer required Doctrine, not migrations. I want the Doctrine ORM module first. However, this will include Doctrine Migrations. That'll actually be the next one that we include. All right.
And for those of you who might not know, Doctrine Migrations essentially allows the command line interface Doctrine tools to work with the database schemas.
Well, the command line interface comes out of the box. So what Doctrine Migrations is going to do for us when we include this is add all of the helpers to the command line that we need, because it's already written in Doctrine ORM module. I mean, these guys did a great job, a wonderful job, and I love this resource and that it's available to us. But now we will be able to configure, like I said, the command line migrations, being able to, what is the simple definition of database migrations? I mean, I'm sure all the people that are paying attention to this know what a database migration is.
Yeah, I just call it database migrations. I mean, I think
Right.
the closest I go from that is an extract, transfer, and load, which
Right.
is kind of a little different.
So we're going to keep it super simple with just migrations. There we go. Finally, my IDE updated. Now, after I've got the Doctrine Migrations included in there and the Doctrine ORM module, we want to go over to our application config and add in here the Doctrine module and the Doctrine ORM module, all caps in this instance, and Doctrine module and Doctrine ORM module. After we have this in place, we'll have to go ahead and create some configuration. Now, you'll want to, you, the listener, will want to change local.php.dist to local.php and put this information in that. But for the sake of sharing this information and making it easily available for everybody, I'm going to go ahead and put my database configuration directly in the global auto-include configuration file. In this case, I'm going to use my Doctrine global configuration live template, which has all the defaults set for literally the default Vagrant box that comes out of puphpet.com. Including the migrations folder. So now we will want to create the directory migrations, and you can see this in this where the directory would be listed in this file. After we create our migrations folder, we will want to start going ahead and creating the entities. So I'm just going to use the existing module, the application module. Zach, are you following along thus far?
I am.
Fantastic. I'm going to use the existing application module. I could create another module. I have in the past while demonstrating this, just to prove a point that you can use entities from any module across other modules. But if you are familiar with Zend Framework 2, then you already know that how all of this works. So I'm just going to go into the application folder and create a model folder and an entity folder. And this is my convention. This is definitely not something that anybody else has to follow, because I mean, once you wrap your head around the configuration, it's very easy to change the folder structure to suit you. Now, in our module.config.php, the first thing I do, especially in this application configuration, there's no namespace, so I have to add the namespace in here, application. Otherwise, my configuration won't work. Now I'm going to add some more live template configuration, which is just simply going to be my Doctrine module configuration. I configure each of the entity repos, like the source of where the entities are, by module. There's very rarely ever create a ZF2 application that just has one module, unless you're creating one module. But either way, this still applies quite well. And again, this is just a live template that you can copy and paste out of the, I believe this is in the ZF2 Doctrine Framework branch of this repo. So, and this is all the further that we need to get to actually include ZF2 and Doctrine, like actually get out the gate with it. So right here, I'm going to take it a step further. Since I'm live coding this, this may not work, but I'm going to create an entity out of this pasty that I got from Zach earlier, and see if this
Recipes.
works. Recipes, yes. This is going to be a recipe object anyway. We probably won't build out the entire structure. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around something that we're not allowed to complete. But let's see here, application model entity. We're going to create a recipe entity class.
I share your sentiment there.
Right. You're going ham on it.
I got 3 tables made for a presentation.
Right. So in this one, we've got, and it extends an abstract entity. I forgot all about that. I do have a simple abstract entity that establishes the base methods that all the entities that I create anyway seem to use, like just real simple stuff. I have this on a live template as well. So let me type this in here. The name is going to be abstract entity, and it will be in the application model entity namespace. All right, and then in this abstract entity, I will make it abstract class, abstract entity. I will do an abstract entity live template, which just simply covers the simple stuff, the get array copy of it, the get JSON array, which really we don't need at all. the exchange array. So if you create the object up, it will hydrate itself with the data, and then the get setter method to support the exchange array. So very simple. Yeah. Now if we go back to recipe, or to the recipe entity, we've got recipe extends abstract entity, and let's see if we made this correctly. These are the PHP doc blocks, or the Docblock version of Zach. What's this called? You can have the XML, the JSON, or the Docblock version of.
Yep, it's called annotations.
Annotations. Well, in this case, it's annotations, I guess. So it explains how the database is connected to this class. Thank you, Zach. In this instance, we're going to call the table recipe, and then it's going to have a few parameters, or columns, fields. One's going to be an integer generated value of ID, string value of name, string value of description, string value of serving size.
Well, you can probably make that
Uh-oh. This looks broken, but either way, because this is serving sizes, name, email, we're just going to get rid of this stuff. Name, company, and then I'm going to get rid of all these getters and setters. So we just have an ID, name, and instructions. How about that?
There we go.
Right. And then I'm going to use wonderful PHP Storm getters and setters, and just create getters and setters for all of these. That's all we should need for our initial entity. See if we can not blow this up. Now I have to actually SSH into the Vagrant box for this, because this is where the database connectivity is, and change directory to the var www folder. I'm going to use the vendor bin Doctrine module.
Yeah, and Doctrine lets you use YML. What is it? They actually call it annotation YML or XML, right?
Yes, YML, XML, not JSON. I was wrong. I get that. I obviously only use the Docblock annotation.
Right.
Yeah.
If you do use the other methods, you'll have to install an additional package. But really, using the Docblock method is the way to go. I mean, at least.
Well, that's all personal preference. I mean, you can have you can generate certain annotations from other things. So I mean, I don't know, whichever way you like going about it might be the best. I mean, I was real fond of YAML just as a configuration structure, but because it seems to me, or at least when I was working on a couple of Ruby applications, it required me to be extra strict without being bloated. So I thought that was convenient. But in the case of PHP, what we're doing right now, doing the Docblock annotation just seems simple. All right, so I just ran the command line vendor bin doctrine module, and I ran migrations :diff. If you just run the command line argument of vendor bin doctrine module, you'll see the help spit out. Now that I created a migration, we'll be able to go over to our migrations here and see that we have a wonderful migration. And to run these migrations, so what this has done is created a MySQL SQL query statement to create, bring up and down this change in the database. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and apply this. And this is based on the recipe entity. Thank you. Migrations, migrate. Yes. And confirm. Fantastic. Now, if we MySQL u root p123, I sent that out loud.
I do it as well.
It's still funny. It's all in the configuration that you can find on GitHub. So I got jokes. Show tables, select or describe recipe. So now we have our recipe table in there and the migrations table that Doctrine will continue to use to keep track of the migrations that have been run, that have not been run. And now you will see that ID, name, and instruction is tied to the recipe entity that we have here. Now, Zach, I created this second branch to move forward, the ZF2 Doctrine Framework branch to move forward from this. What do you think I should do at this point? Should I just create another branch from master, demonstrating the progress that we have made in this video right now? Or should I just burn it and change over to ZF2 master, recreate our entity objects, and move forward to create the RESTful controller.
I think they're this one's almost caught up to that branch, right? For
It's
continuity.
it's beyond it actually. I didn't have the entity in it.
Yeah, I would for continuity's sake, I'd just keep moving along.
All right. I think I should just put a stopgap in here. Would you complain if you were reviewing my code and I had not stopped at this point in time and committed this up and pushed it up for a PR?
No, I mean I think it's okay. I think at this point they're gleaning more information from watching the actual procedures and getting the hands-on experience of somebody actually.
All right. So I'm just going to stop this right here. I'm going to call this branch ZF2 Doctrine with recipe entity. I'm being verbose. Don't hate.
No, that's good.
All right. For anybody that's following along, I'm going to go ahead and add everything that we've done thus far from the master branch into the ZF2 Doctrine. Why do I have to stop talking to think? That's a rough situation. So I'm going to commit this right now. 1 second. Migration. All right, now I'm pushing this branch up as ZF2 underscore doctrine underscore with underscore recipe underscore entity at the repo that we shared earlier, the LisaSec shared earlier. It's github.com/codejetnet, capitalizing the words, then under ZF2 doctrine presentation. Now we can continue moving forward. We have our recipe class. Oh yes, no, we're going to create a new controller for
a rest controller using the Zend rest controller. Yeah.
Yes, recipe controller. Application controller. We're going to make it in the namespace of application controller. The file name will be recipe controller. Oh, recipe controller.php. That's good. Thank you for keeping me on track, PHP Storm. Okay, so all right.
So at this point, we've got Doctrine Migrations up, and we're going to go ahead and build a controller to demonstrate just a basic REST interface using the Doctrine entity for recipes or recipe.
Yeah, I was checking real quick to see if I had a live template for the to work with the abstract RESTful controller, or at least mostly build it, because it's a bunch of generic access points. If you haven't used the abstract, not generic, but it's a bunch of common constant access points. So if you haven't used it before, it's really simple. I'm going to use a class called recipe controller. I'm going to make it extend the abstract RESTful controller. And then I need the database, so private DB. And then for all of the common methods that should exist, get list, get, create. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, just if you'd like to get a little bit of code there to work with, it might make it a little bit quicker.
I could base this in. I mean, I have most of this already written up and many times over, but I might as well just talk it through, although I'm not doing a very good job of that. So what an abstract RESTful controller does is it makes it very easy to access API-ish endpoints that are just simply RESTful controllers. Get list is what is called, this is the method that is called when you send a get request through the router to this controller. And we'll get to the routing part here shortly. Get is when you send it a get request with a following / and an ID number. Create is a post request, which will have post form data. And then create, there will be update, which is a put request with a following or a trailing / and an ID number. Then the data, which will actually come in the content body, like the raw body of the put request. Then there is the delete request, which goes directly to this delete. And it has a trailing ID or a trailing ID number. So it'd be like recipes ID 33, 44, same thing. And then I'm going to add a function to grab the database. Oh, wait, I didn't create a service in which to grab it from. So let's quickly switch back over to the, I believe it will be the module.php. And we want to get a service config. So in this instance, the default application module.php doesn't have a method that is named getServiceConfig. So we'll just create one. And here we will just turn an array of our service configuration. Very simple. Factories. And for this instance, let's just call it application model DB. And we'll use a anonymous method for this. Service method manager. Service manager. What is the Doctrine existing service?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't know.
So essentially, we're trying to new up our database class that we created here. Oh, we didn't even create the database class. Wow, Zach, I'm doing this backwards. So in our model, we have our entities, and this is how my convention works. I will either have a DB folder, if it's going to be complicated with a ton of entities and I want different database access points and I want each of them to have different functionality for different purposes. Or in this case, I will just create a DB class in the application model namespace that will encompass all of our entity management, all of our database connectivity needs, at least for this particular simple instance. And Doctrine DB, I have a live template for this, very simple. All this does, in short, is it is a class that accepts the construct of an entity manager and then provides a couple methods, a couple public methods to fetch all of the entities, fetch one entity, delete one entity, save one, and of course, whether or not you want to flush it out after saving entity. And very simple. Now that I have this class, I can go ahead and create my
I think it's entity manager, perhaps.
Well, the name of the service for Doctrine. So in this case, it is service manager get doctrine dot entity manager, and then ORM underscore default unless you've configured anything beyond the defaults. The live template code that I produced is just using the default configuration for Doctrine's entity manager. And then we want to just return a new, what is namespace is this? This is in the application namespace. So return a new model DB with the entity manager in it. All right. So this is our service configuration. So now that we can call this service up, after I stepped backwards like 80 times. All right. So I'm going to add a private function for getDB, and I have the database property up here. So if no database property, or this database property, parameter property. And I will do this, get service locator, get application, what did we call it? DB, no, model DB. All right. There we go.
And that'll spin up a new factory of the entity manager he just put in the module.
Exactly. It'll give us one of the. It'll give us the database model that we just created back, hydrated with or instantiated with the correct entity manager there. Now this getDB, let's just do fetch all. I believe there's one of them. Yeah. All right. And since this entity manager isn't specifically assigned to any one entity, we're not naming anything. We just we have to new up our entity and pass it to it. So you'll see here under fetch all, it wants an entity, and all it does with that entity is grab the class name of it so that it can find the correct repository. Now, in this case, we will do, what's it, model entity application controller.
Yeah. I'm with you.
There we go. So we're going to recipe equals, actually we could just pass this a new recipe, because all we're doing is telling it what the class name is. So recipes equals this getDB fetch all new recipe. And after we have the recipes in place, we will, I think it's return, no, it's return JSON model is what it is. So in this case, use Zend view model JSON model. And then we will, for each recipes as recipe, we will return recipes equal return recipes equal an array, and then array push return recipes, the recipe to array. I believe to array is part of our abstract entity.
I think it's get array copy.
Yeah, okay. Get array copy. I wonder if I ever get anything done. All right. Now, return new JSON view, JSON model. Yeah, that's what it is. With the return recipes in there. All right. Since all of our properties in the recipes class and the are private, we can't just return the recipes themselves. We actually have to break them down to an array before smushing them back to a JSON in this particular instance, just trying to whip through this. Now, we will want to create our routes. Here, let me find a route template to work with here. All right. Now in our configuration module, we will already have a existing route for the application, literal just / application. And I believe this will work well enough for our RESTful controller. We're going to call this one recipes application controller, and our controller is going to be recipe controller. The action will be index, maybe. We will have an action actually. Now namespace application controller, that's fine. And the controller is recipe controller. That's exactly what we're looking for. And then for the sub calls, recipes / and then instead of a controller, we probably want just an ID. So in this case, we'll just switch this over to an ID. And then optionally allow that trailing /. Fantastic. And then constraints. Don't have controller in here. I just have the ID. We're going to make sure that the ID is only 0 through 9. And it doesn't even need to be an underscore. All right, that should work. The default controller is going to be the recipe controller, and the default action is going to be null. All right. See what happens if we access recipes. Probably nothing yet. Oh, I forgot to add the controller routes in our configuration here. Service manager, translator, controllers. Here we go. Application controller recipe. Oh, come on. Recipe and application controller recipe controller. There we go. That might be a good start. And because we want to return JSON, we need to add that in here as a view strategy. So view manager, I don't see view strategy in here, so I will strategies and add view JSON strategy. I believe. There it is. All right. So now there's nothing in there. So we'll go to the database and insert insert values, name. Oh. Oh, and then our instruction, because it doesn't have a default. So instruction. There we go. So now we're getting our data back from our GET request, our initial list GET request anyway. And as you can see, this is really simple at this point. From here, now we could, just to get one recipe, we'll just do a recipe, new recipe, and then we will give it an ID of this number, the ID that's being passed to it. And then we will we will do this recipe equals this get db fetch recipe. Now let me double check, make sure that this is how this works. So it's going to check for the ID of the entity, and if it doesn't exist, it won't be able to find it. So yeah, as long as we set that ID, we should be good to go. So recipe equals this get db fetch the recipe, then return new JSON model.
I think you'll need to convert it or get array copy on the recipe there.
Yes. All right. So let's just try that. Recipes 1. Uh-oh.
Yes.
Huh. So in our recipe entity, we didn't create a construct that would distribute the information. So public function construct data, and then null if data change array. So now we can hydrate it with some data if we use that array when we new it up. So this should work now. There it is. So now we can call 1 or we can get the list. Very simple. Although there's only one. It's exciting. Yeah. So I'm going to add 2 more awesome instructions. And then I'm going to make this some other recipe. All right. Cool. So now we have 2 recipes in there, 1 and 2. And if we look at 2, this is some other recipe. And this is 1. Fantastic. All right. Now now we can create. So this will take your post request and convert it into an array of into this data variable as an array. So in order to create this, and obviously we're overlooking everything that isn't specifically Doctrine and ZF2. I mean, actually, at this point, we're just messing with Doctrine. I mean, we're building out the abstract RESTful controller, or the recipe controller, which is extending the abstract RESTful controller with the necessary methods. But I'm overlooking a lot of stuff that you would normally put in place before deploying an application, such as I'm going to start creating these objects without caring at all where the data is coming from, what the data is, or if it is passing any validation or filtering. So with that said, put your cowboy hats on. Let's go. Now,
yeah, you'll definitely want some prior experience with ZF2 at least, you know, before you jump in here.
It's all good. And we're going to pass the data being posted directly, creating a new recipe. So you have to, this will have to match it perfectly, right? And then we will just this get db, save recipe. We're not even going to have it respond with any kind of HTTP status header or anything like that. We're just going to have it save it. So now let's see if I have Postman open. I don't. Okay. Now, http://local.recipe. Was it recipe or recipes? Recipes. And then recipes. Not a put request, a get request. All right. Now, if we send a post request, and the body will be form data. So let's not do an ID. We'll just do a name. Cuban burgers and description, or what? That was instruction, right? Instructions.
Yeah, instructions.
All right. Instruction 1.
Good luck.
Right. So we'll see what this does. We're posting this. Oh, I didn't send any data back, so it's going to try and formulate a view. So let's go ahead and return new JSON model. Now, when I do this, send this to the database, yeah, it sends me back that one rewritten. Recipe, get array copy. So now it should hand it back to us with the ID in it after we posted it. There we go. So now we've got 4 or whatever Cuban burgers. Let's do breakfast pizza. Instructions are put it in the oven, and then so now I've got 5, right? And then I can just send a get request to my recipes. You'll see all the recipes there. Now, actually, does this not cover ZF2 and Doctrine, or am I just wasting my time now?
I think we got a pretty clear, pretty clear demonstration across.
Yeah, and I went over this with you enough before this that it's ingrained in your head. So I mean, I think we're good to go, because right now I just feel worse and worse the more I create this controller with overlooking the
the meat, yeah.
Yeah, the meat. But you know, it takes less than, how long have we been doing this?
40 minutes. We started at 8.
Dude, I did it in under an hour. So it takes less than an hour if you don't count the VM spinning up. And I will go ahead and create another branch from this, push it up to the GitHub repo, and as a final we stopped here branch. And if you want to grab that and move forward, or anybody does, then please feel free. I think that's it. I think we're done, Zach.
I believe before we close up, I think we're going to try to do this again in 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks or a month. It depends on how good my boss does his job. If he's doing his job, I probably won't be able to do this for another month. And he's been doing his job, so.
I understood. Well, we'll be trying to do this sometime in the near future. We're not sure what it'll be on, but we will definitely be doing it again in the near future.
Exactly. About a month. Let's just forecast a month, and we'll do something else. Maybe, you know, something on Slim or something, because that seems fun, easy.
Definitely. Okay. Well, hey, thanks everybody for watching.
Yep. Bye.